Bonjour from the deep dive. We're coming to you live from the Paris Motor
Oh,
Show
yeah.
2024 and
It's buzzing?
it is buzzing. I am so excited about this one. It seems like especially for European car makers, right? This
Mm,
is kind of their time to shine.
absolutely.
So we are seeing big names like Renault and Peugeot, the Volkswagen group, of course. Even Ford made the trip across the pond for this one. So
You know it's important.
yeah, what are some of the big themes that you're seeing? I know we're going to dive into all this.
Definitely EVs.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's almost impossible to ignore.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is it's impossible to ignore the electric buzz here. But first, let's
Yeah.
let's just lay it all out there for our listeners. We've got a stack of articles about the Paris Motor Show.
You do.
And we're going to do a deep dive into all the coolest reveals and trends, and especially for us, I think
Oh, yeah.
all the electric and self-driving tech. And then, of course, we have to talk about the concept cars, because those are always so futuristic and cool. But it's not all about the future, because there's a really cool exhibit here called Movie Cars Central,
Yes.
which is all about like iconic movie cars. So we're talking the Batmobiles, Doc Brown's DeLorean,
Oh, it's so
cool stuff like that.
That's
So
going to be good.
yeah, we're going to circle back to that a little bit later. But let's start with what's really turning heads on the showroom floor,
Okay.
and that is the EVs. So you mentioned EVs.
Yes.
Alpine, for instance, is really kind of stealing the show here with its A390 SUV prototype. Now, what makes this one so special?
Well, a couple things. The aerodynamic design is really captivating people. It's optimized for efficiency, but they haven't compromised on that sleek Alpine aesthetic.
Okay, so you get
You get the best of both worlds.
form and function,
Exactly.
which is what everybody wants. Now, speaking of cool cars, we have to talk about the twin electric city cars. We've got the Alpine A290 and the Renault 5 E-Tech.
So cool.
And these are just cool. Like, they're giving off these
Total retro vibes.
retro vibes, exactly.
Yeah.
But with a modern electric heart.
Yeah. And Renault's really smart for doing that. They're
Yeah.
tapping into that nostalgia to invite a wider audience into the world of EVs.
Totally. It's like bridging this gap between like generations of car lovers. I love it. But they're not the only ones making a splash in the electric SUV market, because Alfa Romeo has also thrown their hat into the ring with their electric SUV Junior. What can you tell us about that? Who are they hoping to attract with this one?
Yeah. So Junior seems to be geared towards a younger demographic, probably more city dwellers. It's compact. It's stylish. Perfect for like zipping around urban landscapes.
It's all about like finding that perfect car for your lifestyle these days.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so we've got all these amazing cars, but we have to talk about the infrastructure, because you can have the coolest electric car in the world, but if you can't charge it, what's the point?
Totally. Nobody wants range anxiety.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are we seeing at the Paris Motor Show in terms of like charging solutions? Because that's critical.
Charging is huge, and we're seeing some really impressive solutions. Super fast charging stations are a big one. They can juice up your battery in minutes.
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 Oh.
That's like fast food for your car.
Right. And then even more futuristic wireless charging solutions are taking center stage. So you just park your car and it automatically charges without any cords.
No more like trying to wrangle cables in the dark.
Exactly.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
But speaking of the future of driving, we have to talk about self-driving technology.
Oh, yeah. It's a big one.
It is a big one. And it's funny because I recently got to test out a car with just some basic lane assist. And even that little glimpse into the future blew my mind. I was like, this is crazy.
Right.
So I can't even imagine like where we're headed next.
And it is evolving so quickly. The Paris Motor Show is actually offering people a firsthand look at some of those advancements.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they've got demonstrations and I think even opportunities for people to like experience some of it.
Get behind the wheels, so to speak.
Right. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I think it's important to like break down the levels of autonomy, because I hear
it can be confusing.
yes, and a little sci-fi for those of us who haven't quite wrapped our heads around it. Can you just like give us like a quick breakdown?
Yeah, totally. So there are 5 levels. Level 1, which is already pretty common, that includes features like lane assist and adaptive cruise control. So like driver assistance, basically.
Helpful, but not like fully taking over.
Right. And then as we move up the levels, the car takes on more and more responsibility. So level 3, the car can pretty much drive itself, but the driver still needs to be like alert and ready to take over if something happens.
So no napping in the driver's seat yet?
Not quite.
Okay.
But then you get to level 4, where the car can handle almost all driving situations, independently so, without human intervention. Now, a caveat to that is it's usually within certain geographic areas or under certain conditions.
Okay.
But still,
that's getting closer to what we've been promised.
Exactly. And the Jetsons, exactly. And then there's level 5, which is full autonomy.
Okay.
Which means the car can drive itself in any situation, under any conditions, without any human input.
Sign me up. Like rush hour traffic, no problem.
Yeah, like you're just relaxed.
I'll be in the back watching a movie.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's definitely exciting, but it also raises some big questions. I mean, we're talking about trusting machines with our safety, with our lives.
It's a big deal. And I think there's a lot of like ethical consideration. Like what happens if there's an unavoidable accident? You know, like how does the car decide? Does it prioritize the safety of the passengers over pedestrians? It's tough. Tough questions, but I think important ones that we need to be asking. And it seems like, you know, the Paris Motor Show, with its focus on all this innovation, is kind of the perfect place for those conversations to start happening.
Absolutely. It's the place to have them because you've got industry leaders, you've got policymakers.
You've got the public.
The public. Right. So it's like, let's
all figure this out together. Yeah. But in the meantime, let's shift gears just a little bit because another big theme at this year's Paris Motor Show is sustainability.
Yes.
And I don't just mean in terms of like electric cars, but like the whole industry seems to be really embracing sustainable practices.
Definitely. And sustainable materials.
Yes. Tell me more about that because this is fascinating to me.
Okay, so we're seeing an increasing use of recycled materials in car manufacturing.
Okay.
So things like recycled carbon fiber, bioplastics. Have you heard of bioplastic?
Yeah, I've heard that term, but I need like a little...
Okay, so basically they're using plants to make car interiors.
That's really cool.
So like corn, sugarcane, things like that.
Wow, science is amazing.
It is.
So it's like we're moving away from those gas guzzlers, right? Embracing electric, and now we're building cars out of plants.
I know. It's very cool.
It seems like the future of driving is looking pretty green.
It is. It's definitely a step in the right direction, but, you know.
There are always challenges.
Challenges and counter-arguments to consider.
Like what? What are some of the things that we need to be thinking about?
Well, one of the big ones is the environmental impact of battery production for electric cars.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. Because you have to think about where are those materials coming from and how are they disposed of.
Right, it's a process.
It is a process. But the good news is that the industry is making strides in addressing those concerns.
Okay, so what are they doing to like tackle those environmental impacts?
So one of the key areas is improving the battery technology itself.
Okay.
So batteries are lasting longer, which means we need to replace them less often.
Makes sense.
And probably more importantly, the manufacturing processes are becoming much more sustainable.
Oh, good.
So we're seeing a big push to reduce waste, to minimize water usage, and to lower carbon footprints throughout that whole production cycle.
So it's a work in progress, but at least it seems like they're aware of the problem and they're trying to fix it.
Exactly. And that's what's important. They're acknowledging the challenges and actually trying to find solutions.
That's what we like to see. Okay, so we've talked about electric dreams, the road to self-driving, and this big push for sustainability.
A lot.
But we can't forget about the fun side of the Paris Motor Show, which is that incredible movie Car Central exhibit that we talked about earlier. I mean, come on, who hasn't dreamt of, like, cruising around town in the Batmobile?
Or taking a spin in Doc Brown's DeLorean.
Exactly.
Come on.
Tell me more about some of the cars that we can actually see in this exhibit.
So we've got all the classics. We've got the Batmobile, obviously. We've got Doc Brown's time-traveling DeLorean.
Love it.
And we've got the sleek Aston Martins from James Bond.
Ooh, very cool.
So classic.
So sophisticated.
Yes.
Those are some high-octane cars.
They are. They're really cool. And the Paris Motor Show has brought together like a collection to get any movie buff's heart racing.
I bet.
Yeah, it's cool.
And of course, we can't forget about that classic French touch, the Peugeot 406 from the movie Taxi.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
So good.
Got to represent.
Yeah, I got to rep for the home team.
Exactly. And it's a smart move, right? Showcasing a beloved French car in the heart of Paris.
Yeah.
It adds that extra layer of like local pride and a little bit of cinematic history to the exhibit.
Très bien. Now I can practically hear that Eurodance soundtrack in my head.
Right.
But it's not just about like gazing at these automotive legends from a distance, right?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about like the interactive element because I hear there is one.
Oh yeah, this show is all about immersion.
Okay.
So attendees are going to have opportunities to like get up close and personal with these cars.
Okay.
And rumor has it, there might even be a chance to sit in some of them.
To actually sit in the Batmobile, to like touch the flux capacitor.
I know, right?
Okay, now you're speaking my language.
That's going to be cool.
So cool. It's that kind of like hands-on experience that really takes it to the next level.
Oh, absolutely. It lets you relive those memories.
Yeah.
And it kind of reignites that childlike sense of wonder that we all feel when we see these cars that we grew up with.
It's true. It's like the coolest history lesson ever.
Right.
And, you know, it's funny because we have this exhibit with these like classic movie cars that are just like the epitome of cool.
Right.
And it's happening like right alongside these conversations about electric vehicles and self-driving technology, which is like
The future.
The future. It's like the past, the present, and the future are all coming together in this one space.
You've got it.
It's really cool.
And it makes you think about, like, you know, we were just talking about self-driving cars. And that does bring up some
whole questions.
ethical considerations because it's a big deal. We're talking about trusting machines with our safety.
Yeah.
Our lives even. And that's huge.
It is huge. And I think one of the things that I think about is like, in an unavoidable accident scenario,
Right.
like how does a self-driving car decide? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, does it prioritize the safety of the passengers, even if it means like endangering a pedestrian? Like how...
It's a tough question.
It's a really tough question.
It's a moral dilemma that engineers and ethicists and policymakers are like really grappling with right now.
Yeah, and I don't think there's an easy answer.
No.
But I think just having these conversations...
It's so important.
It was so important.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Paris Motor Show, with its focus on, you know, innovation and really like looking ahead to where things are headed, it's kind of the perfect place for these conversations to at least start.
Totally. Because you need a place to bring everyone together, right?
Yeah.
The industry leaders, the policymakers, and then just the public too, because we all have a stake in it.
We're all going to be impacted by it eventually.
Exactly. And it's our future, so we should be part of shaping it.
I love that. So it's like we have these classic movie cars that are reminding us of like
The joy.
the joy of driving, the freedom. But then we also have this new wave of technology that's challenging us to really rethink what driving even means
And how it's going to look.
in the coming years.
Yeah, and like how do we ensure that it's beneficial for everyone?
Right. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we implement it.
Right. And how we use it.
Exactly.
It really makes you think, like, where is this all headed? Like,
Yeah.
what is that driving experience going to be like for just like everyday people in 5, 10, 20 years?
It's wild to think about, right? Like imagine a future where your daily commute isn't this like stressful thing.
All right.
But it's actually an opportunity to like relax or catch up on work or even just like enjoy the scenery.
Yeah. Or listen to a podcast,
Exactly.
which hopefully is this one.
Yes, of course.
But I love that idea of like just sort of like gliding through traffic, sunlight streaming in through the sunroof.
Yeah.
And like the car is doing all the work and I can just like chill.
Exactly. And with the advancements in like battery technology and charging infrastructure range, anxiety is like,
Gone. You know?
yeah, no more like stressing about where you're going to plug in.
Exactly. You can just go about your day. No problem.
It's so freeing.
Right.
Okay, but I have to ask, with all this talk about electric cars, self-driving cars, what about people who just love to drive?
Right.
Like, is there still going to be a place for like, you know, that feeling of a manual transmission? Like really like getting behind the wheel. Is that going to be gone?
It's a good question. And I've heard a lot of car enthusiasts asking the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think the answer is yes. Like, I think there will always be a place for that.
Okay, good.
Because, you know, even though the automotive landscape is changing, like that passion for driving, I don't think that's going anywhere.
That's true.
And there will always be people who just, they crave that feeling of like a manual gearbox, you know?
You got to feel the car.
You got to feel it.
Right, like you're connected to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's about like replacing one or the other,
Right.
but it's more like expanding the definition of what driving can even be.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like an either situation. It's like we can have it all.
We can have it all.
We can have our electric cars and eat them too.
Exactly. And think about it like this. Imagine a future where you have the option to like effortlessly navigate rush hour traffic in your self-driving car,
Okay.
right? But then on the weekend, you could take your like electric sports car
Yeah.
with a manual gearbox
Yes.
and like carve through mountain roads.
The best of both worlds.
It is.
I love it. Well, it seems like the Paris Motor Show is not only showcasing like the present and the future of the automotive world,
Right.
but it's also like prompting these really important conversations about like how these advancements are going to impact our lives.
Absolutely. And I think that's crucial to have these conversations now so that we can shape that future.
Yeah. It's been so fascinating and like diving into all these highlights from the Paris Motor Show.
It's been fun.
Like from those sleek electric vehicles to like the ethical side of self-driving. Right.
And then just like that push for sustainability.
It's a lot to consider.
It is a lot, but it's exciting stuff. So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive here, what would you say is like the key takeaway? What do you want our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the auto industry is changing. Like it's on the cusp of this like really remarkable transformation.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are challenges. There are definitely questions that we need to answer.
Right.
But you can just feel this like sense of optimism.
I love that.
You know, it feels like we're moving towards a future where like technology is actually improving our lives.
Yeah.
Where sustainability isn't just this like afterthought.
Right. It's not a trend. It's like
it's part
of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And where the joy of driving is like being redefined.
I love it. The open road awaits.
It does.
And it's looking pretty bright and electric from where I'm standing.
Yeah, I agree.
This is The Deep Dive, signing off until next time.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.